Hello and thanks for joining us here today on the Emirates LitFest channel. If you like books, you've come to the right place. I'm here in the LitFest studios with authors from all over the world who've come to Dubai to participate in the Emirates Airline Festival of Literature. Now, my next guest is really rather special, having served in many important roles in Somaliland, including First Lady to the Prime Minister and, in her own right, the position of Foreign Minister. She's the director and founder of a maternity hospital in Hargeisa. She has a university named after her in the same city, and she's a leading activist for the abolition of FGM, that's female genital mutilation. She's Edna Adan Ismail, and it's a real honour and a pleasure to talk to her today here on Emirates. So, first of all, welcome to Emirates and welcome to Dubai, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honoured to be here with you, and it's a pleasure. Thank you.
It's lovely to have you. I've been reading your book. It's entitled A Woman of Firsts, and I have it here. And my goodness, what a long and colourful life you've led, Edna. I couldn't believe it. And now it's all down in this book, and it really is a fascinating read. First of all, let's start at the beginning. What prompted you to produce this book?
Well, it was a lifelong ambition. And I've wanted to write it. I never had time. I was busy chasing after so many other things, a hospital, students, patients, diplomatic life, and quite a few other things. And then as life goes on, and I thought, I think the next generation needs to know something about the challenges I've had, the obstacles I've had to jump, and maybe learn from it and not make the same mistakes. I enjoyed it. It was a learning process, and it was wanting to get my story told to the next generation. That was really a motivating push.
It must have brought back many, many memories.
Many memories. One of the few, or the first girls in my country, former British Somaliland Protectorate, who went to school. The first girl who was awarded a scholarship to study in Britain, way back in 1954, where at a time when very often I was the only black face in the classroom, became my country's first nurse and midwife, came home to Somaliland in 1961, started training others, motivating other girls to join the health profession, then married a diplomat, married the very first president that my independent country, former British Somaliland, had. So diplomatic life came to it. I've had a varied life. Then there was the revolution, the communist regime. We united with neighboring Somalia. I became a political prisoner, joined the UN, worked in different countries in the world, had my ups and my downs and the in-betweens. And in 1997, I retired from the UN and cashed in my terminal benefits and everything I'd ever saved, sold my beautiful car, my jewelry, and went home to my country, Somaliland. A country that was recovering from a long, long civil war with Somalia. A country that had been flattened, with hospitals destroyed, schools destroyed, 250,000 of our people dead, a lot of war debris still lying around. And I went home and realized my lifelong ambition to build a hospital. And since '97, for the past 22 years, I've been living in the guest quarters of my hospital. It's become a teaching hospital, a referral hospital. We get patients from anywhere in the Horn of Africa. And since 7 years, I have the Edna Adan University, where I'm so proud 70% of my students are women. And where, on occasions when the stars are very well aligned, I would have a female chief surgeon from Somaliland, an assistant surgeon from Somaliland, an anaesthetist female, instrument nurse, supervised by a theatre supervisor who's a Somaliland female, working in a hospital built by a Somaliland female, and the patient on the table is a male patient, and all that women, that energy of those women is going into saving that one life. Now that's what I lived for, and that's what made me write that book.
Wow, that's
Because
all I can say.
The world has to know about what can happen, what can be achieved when women are given a chance to become educated, to learn, to build, to save, to contribute to this world.
I want to take you back in just a second to your early days of growing up in Somaliland, but I think first, can we clear up the difference? Because to be honest, I hadn't realised until I looked at my atlas exactly where Somaliland is and its relationship to Somalia. Yes. So the two are very different. We are neighbours, but
totally different. Like,
tell us a little bit
like
about
cheese and chalk.
Really?
Well, there's French Somaliland, former French Somaliland, the Republic of Djibouti, which is the former La Côte Française des Somalie. Then there's the portion that was former British Somaliland Protectorate, where we had contingents fighting alongside the Allies in the First and the Second World War, and the only Victoria Cross awarded for bravery during the Second World War was to a hero in my country, British Somaliland Protectorate. And then there's the next country, which is La Somalia Italiana, former Italian Somalia. And then there's Somalis living in Ethiopia, there's Somalis living in Kenya. Now in 1960, former British Somaliland Protectorate became the first independent Somali nation. We hold that place in history, the firstborn, fully sovereign Somali nation. The same Independence Day as Madagascar, by the way. And then when Italian Somalia also became independent, the two independent nations united. Union is good. It was meant to bring all the other Somalis together. But some unions work, some don't. Our particular union did not work, and it ended up into a long civil war and a lot of pain and destruction in the Horn. And 30 years ago, the people of Somaliland separated from former Italian Somalia. And that's why people never hear about Somaliland, because nothing happens in Somaliland. Just crazy old women build hospitals, and the country is democratic, and the country is peaceful. Our people are coming back from the diaspora, rebuilding the country, whereas our neighbors in Somalia are always in the news. And I won't go into details about that. So that is the difference between the two countries. One's peaceful, stable, the other one needs to be peaceful and stable, but unfortunately is not yet that.
So let's go back to your childhood, your early life. Can you recall what it was like growing up in with your family? Things very different now, obviously.
Yes. We had a privileged life. My father was the first doctor in my country, Somaliland, so I grew up in a home where my father was always was always very busy and was always required to go look after an emergency. A very kind man, a very generous man, a great role model who I admire to this day, and who taught me many values, who taught me compassion for the poor, kindness for the sick, and nothing but quality care. And if a human being deserves to be looked after, that human being deserves to be looked after with dignity, regardless of how rich or poor that person is. And those values have served me well. And that childhood, my childhood with a very busy father, made me want to one day build the kind of hospital maybe my father would have liked to work in, because I would often hear him in his practice wishing for a better pair of scissors, wish I had a sterilizer that worked. Wished I had a pair of scissors that would cut. Wish he had different type of sutures. And I would say, well, one day I will have that for my father. How I would do it, I had no idea. But it was the wish of a 10, 11, 12-year-old girl who wanted to do what, to answer the wishes of her father. Because my wishes were always met. If I needed a toy, or I had a home, I had a comfort. And these were my way that I would pay back this man who I admired a lot. And that has guided me well. And
but was your father's the only form of healthcare in British Somaliland at the time, or in some of the poorer districts, did people turn to alternative remedies?
Oh yes. Well, he was the only Somali. He was the most senior Somali medical person. There was the British doctors and British health services. But the majority of people who are nomads, our people are nomads. 70–60% of our people follow the herds of camels and sheep and goats, which, by the way, is the backbone of our economy, the export of livestock. We export livestock to the Emirates and to many other Arab countries. And very often the nomads would would seek the advices and the ministrations of a local healer, a traditional healer. Very often it was a question of hit and miss, quite often miss. So those who had access to a hospital and medical facilities for conditions that the healer could do nothing about, then would come to hospitals, whether it be to my father or to other doctors. So there was always hospitals were overcrowded, and that was my first exposure to medical care and poverty and suffering and death, often preventable.
You won a scholarship to Britain to train as a nurse, a midwife.
Yes.
Must have been quite a culture shock to go from Somaliland, the heat of Somaliland, to the cold,
and the snow,
dreary,
and the wind and the mist and the fog and oh yes, of course.
We still have it, by the way.
I know. I check on you now and again. Yes.
What was it like?
Well, I was hungry for knowledge, and if my acquiring knowledge took me to Britain, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I appreciated it, and tried to soak up as much as I could. And my leaving home, flying out from Somaliland in 1954, at the eve of my departure, I still see my mother's friends, her women friends, coming to cry with my mother, and oh, you poor you, we heard the bad news, oh, you poor you, your daughter is going on her own to England, and predicting all the bad things that I would become and would do, and I thought, I am not going to become all those things they say I would become. Education will not make me become that kind of a person. So it was, I love education, I love learning, I soak up knowledge. I wanted to disprove my mother's friends that I would not become all those bad things they predicted I would become. And since very often I was the only black face among my students, I wanted to prove to everybody that I could learn as well, or maybe not as well, as anybody. And my skin had nothing to do with my learning ability. So it was a challenge. And then, of course, I was loving the experience, seeing the traffic, the double-decker buses, and the lifts, and all the things that the modern world had that I had never even seen or heard about. And it took a couple of months for me and others to get used to it. And once we got used to it, we just blended. And I had a wonderful 7 years in your country, and very often I say that everything I've become, you got British taxpayers to thank for it. And everything I've done wrong, blame it on them as well.
You came back to Somaliland, you married a diplomat, and you eventually became, and I'm rushing through this because there's so much to talk about. What did you set out to achieve? There you are, you're in a position of enormous influence, you have the ear of the Prime Minister, being married to him. What did you set out to achieve?
My target was to achieve, how should I say, you see, everybody thought that the daughter of Dr. Adan should not become a nurse. It was a profession that was below the dignity of the daughter of a doctor. And I wanted to put nursing on that map. I also wanted to put the education of women on the map. And I wanted to put the importance of respect and compassion also on the map. So as a Prime Minister's wife, I chose to work in the hospital for 2 days every week when we were not traveling, and to continue to teach, to wear my uniform, to deliver babies, and to show my students that even the wife of a Prime Minister, when that person is delivering a patient, treat that patient with respect. I wanted to stress the importance of accuracy, punctuality, the value of the uniform, what it signifies. And of course, I wanted to fight bugs and dirt in a hospital, and the importance of cleanliness in a hospital, and efficiency and sterility. So these were the values, these were the things I targeted, and which I enjoyed far more than I enjoyed coffee morning parties for other wives of diplomats. Hospitals, that was my life. I knew what to do, and I knew what to go after. And I hope I left my mark there.
What did patients think when there they were in hospital, maybe to give birth, and suddenly they were being tended to by the wife of the Prime Minister? Must have been quite an event.
I think they were grateful, and somehow well, first, there was no television in those days, so very often they did not see, they didn't know who I was. They just thought of me as yet another teacher supervising the students. But some of them did know me, and sometimes would say, please, can you deliver me, assuming that I would do a better job. And I said, no, my student, who is just as good as I am, will be delivering you, but I'll be with you, and giving importance to the students. There were 2 days in the week where I overdosed with adrenaline and happiness and joy and gratitude that I could do this. And of course, it would anger my husband, and it would anger other politicians that I would choose to be working in a hospital as a Prime Minister's wife when I could be doing, I don't know, other functions.
I'm going to raise a subject now which many people might not feel appropriate for sitting on an aircraft, but I know it's a subject dear to your heart, which is FGM, female genital mutilation.
Yes.
I know it's something that was very common when you were growing up. You're very much an advocate for ending this practice. Are we making progress?
We're making slow progress. We're not making the kind of progress we should and we could be making. And I'm going to take this opportunity to appeal for support from learned people, from Islamic scholars. I'm going to solicit support from fathers of those girls who are being cut up and mutilated and damaged, and whose potential to reproduce is damaged because of this mutilation that is done to them at age 7 and 6. I want to solicit the support and the encouragement from scholars in Mecca and Medina, holy places where we Muslims go for pilgrimage, and where women in those countries are not mutilated. So I appreciate this opportunity that millions of people will hopefully hear this. It's a battle that needs to be fought by all responsible parents, by all responsible Muslims, by all responsible people, whether health professionals and others, who respect the value of our daughters, respect and take it upon themselves to protect them from unnecessary damage, because this is a practice that is not required by our religion, Islam. It's a traditional, old practice that has no place in this day and age. So, world, please help. Please protect our daughters. And protect their unborn children, because when the girl is so damaged, it also affects the baby that she is bringing to the world at the moment of birth. Because that part of her body that was created by God, by Allah, to allow the birth of a child is damaged, and the baby suffocates and is not able to come out and may die. So we're not fighting an old tradition only, we're fighting possible death of a newborn, unnecessary death of a newborn child. My appeal, again, is to Islamic scholars. Tell us what is right, and tell the world what is right to stop this practice. It has no place on this planet in this day and age.
Well, I hope people on this Emirates flight hear that message loud and clear.
Thank you, I hope so.
We're coming to an end, but before we do so, I want to just talk about your hospital and your university, both of which in Somaliland are named after you.
Yes.
That is almost a fitting culmination to your long and distinguished career. How do you feel about it now when you see these fine institutions?
I feel very blessed. I feel very grateful that I could see the day when this would happen. I'm happy that I could, I shouldn't say I could, because many people have helped me. It carries my name. But as they say, I stand on the proverbial shoulders of many giants. I get lecturers from around the world. I get equipment from around the world. I get interns who come and study with us and interact with our students. We learn from so many others who have so much more experience. It's also something that proves that, again, as I said in the beginning, education for a woman is not wasted. It can bring a lot of good for the nation. And I'm grateful that when in the old days people would refuse their daughters to take up the nursing profession or the medical profession, today I get parents who bring me their daughters and say, Mrs. Edna, I want my daughter to be like you. And I say, no, not like me. Better. That's what I want your daughter to be. I'm blessed and privileged. I'm choking up because at 82, if I should no longer be here the next minute, I know that there are many educated people in my country today who will carry my torch, my vision further and forward. I'm very blessed.
Edna, thank you so much for joining us today on Emirates World. I'd like you to hold your book in front of you, because I think it deserves to be read by as many people as possible. It's an inspirational book, and it's called A Woman of Firsts. It's written in conjunction with Wendy Holden and Lee Castellini.
That's it.
And it's a magnificent book. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us today here on Emirates.
Thank you very much. Thank you.